get started. All
Okay.
right. So we are joining today. It is April 2023, and we are on our 4th month of our book club this year. So yeah, super excited. This month we tackled the book Black Fatigue, which is by Mary Frances Winters, and it's building upon the books we've read throughout 2023 so far. We've hit My Grandmother's Hands, we've hit post-traumatic slave syndrome, we've hit the burnout, the stress cycle, and now we're at Black fatigue. And so we have Pamela joining us, one of our lovely therapists at Encompassing Center. And we're not going to name names, but we have a community member that actually was able to read the book and join us today. So we're super, super excited. And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen because I want everyone to see kind of where we're going with the topics today and see what this Black fatigue is about and what they're saying and sharing in the book. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so the world could see what we're looking at and what we're talking about. And so, as you guys listen to our book club discussion today, I want you guys to really soak in the picture that is on the screen of the tree and all the little things that kind of impact us in Black fatigue with the branches and all the leaves of the little individual things that are huge that make up this whole idea. And so, what do we know about fatigue? I know, Pamela, you've been fatigued before. I'm sure our special guest has been fatigued before. But what do you guys think of when you hear the word fatigue or if you're tired?
Yeah, definitely exhausted. Like you can't even get up in the morning.
Mhm. Yeah. And our
Yeah, that's what
special
I feel.
guest,
That
what do
you're
you
really
think?
tired.
Tiredness?
Really tired.
Yes, yes, really tired. And so what Mary Winters talks about, she gives us the regular definition, right? She says fatigue is extreme tiredness, is resulting from mental and physical exertion, and sometimes when we are not feeling well or illness. And so this idea of Black fatigue builds upon that when there's repeated variations of stress that provides this extreme exhaustion, that really, really tiredness that causes mental, physical, and spiritual ailments that are passed down through generations, right? And it's so embedded that it takes a great amount of energy for us to overcome it. And then it feels like you have to be what she calls it, like this Hercules, right? Feeling that you need to get through it and be optimistic. And it takes a lot of faith to be able to overcome that. We shall overcome someday. I'm not a singer, but that's that feeling that we feel. And so in talking about that, she suggests that we need to start taking a look at dismantling some of these old racist systems. And so, as you guys read through the book, what are some of the things that stood out that Miss Winters, the author, brings up as some of those things that we need to break down and dismantle? And I'll give you an example. One of it is health disparities. So access to healthcare and doctors and good stuff like that. Me and Pamela were just talking before we got on about the what did you call it? Urban renewal. She talks about with
Oh,
gentrification and things like that. So Pamela,
yeah.
I'll open the floor for you and our special guest to open the floor. What are some of the things that our author wants us to break down or things that you see that we need to change in some of our systems?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I think reading this book, the first thing that came to mind was our clinic, which is in North Lawndale, East and West Garfield Park area. And I think something that I realized like I want to change now is, we kept saying like, oh, the Black community, is untrusting, right? Like that's why, it may be a little bit difficult for them to come get services with us or they're not comfortable. But I think instead of using that term that I feel like I myself may have been using in the past, now I really wanted to go to like, well, why are they uncomfortable, right? Or why are they untrusting? And then here they talked about like the syphilis studies and where, you know, um, decisions pretty much use, Black people to do a lot of harm. And because of that, the Black community is very untrusting of physicians, of clinicians who have been racist, who maybe treat them, poorly, have them wait for weeks, hours while they're sitting at a clinic, really needing help. And so instead of really using that like conversation of, oh, maybe the Black community, is doesn't have that much trust, or really starting to talk about, oh, maybe it's just that there's been a lot of racist behaviors and things that have been done unfairly, that has really in some way made them a little bit skeptical about if we're really going to be providing good sources or good you know practices to them. And then what I was talking with you, Jennifer, about the urban renewal was that I had recently learned about, Mayor Daley doing the expressway next to pretty much downtown area, which was like the urban renewal. But pretty much, James Baldwin called this urban renewal that was happening all over, pretty much saying like it was just a way for the Black community to be taken out and being like disproportionate from their hometown. So because of the, I-90 and the expressway, this really was like a wall, a legit wall, for the Black community in Chicago to not be able to go to downtown, to, be in a food desert, to not be able to get a certain jobs. And it was just really sad. And, this is something that she talks about in the book, like urban renewal. They made it seem like such a great thing, but it really wasn't. It was, brought in a lot of racist ideals, which I didn't know until now.
And I open the floor for our guests. What are some of the systems that you may think of or you have experienced, or just people that you love and care about that has shown some disparities and some issues when it comes to Black people versus others?
Well, the education system is not
Mhm,
fair or equal or equitable throughout the city of Chicago. Um,
mhm,
that's the main thing. But the thing with that is we know that. So we always had to do more and
Mhm.
be better just to be, on a scale of 1 to 10, we had to do more and do better on a scale of 1 to 10 to get to 8 or 9. And
mhm.
other people, because they had more books and uh, well, at the time I was going to school, there was more books and more opportunities to
Mhm.
do better. So
Yep.
like I said, we had to work much, much, much harder.
Mhm.
And I just happened to be in a group that I think they worked harder because they did relatively well for
Mhm.
being, Black people in the uh, what mid '60s and '70s.
Right, right. And she talks a lot about that education wise, and even leaving out of college and going into America, how the pay, like what people are paid, Black people
Yeah.
are still paid lower than
Yes.
counterparts and all that stuff. And I also think of how she mentioned the criminal justice system and how
Yes.
that system, oh, like she went in hard. She brought up Black Panther and how that was like created due to the killing of an unarmed 16-year-old back in like 66. And then
Yes.
I remember my first encounter of seeing like police brutality was like in 92 with Rodney King. And here we are today. We're still seeing things such as like George Floyd and Eric Garner and all that other stuff. So it's so many systems and even politics. We recently got a new mayor, but the turnout for voting was very low. And so, how do we get that energy like when Obama was running again to be able to vote for those politicians to come in that really want to do good work versus those that have other agendas that kind of support keeping these broken systems in place. And so she she says that like racism is literally making us sick. And that phrase, I love it because I've used it. My friends have used it. I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired, right? And
Yeah.
so she talks about, rest, as being a form of resilience, and the nap ministry and self-care. But even with that, like, are we really reflecting on and attending to our wellness? And so thinking about stress and chronic stress, what are some of the impacts you've seen? Pamela, you can talk about, like, have you seen with clients? And then our guests, you can talk about what you've seen with friends. What does chronic stress do to us, like physically, socially, all that stuff?
Yeah. I think as for what I've seen with chronic stress, obviously that leads to a lot of health disparities and a lot of problems such as like, man, it just makes everything so much worse and horrible. And our health, people with stress aren't able to sleep. They're either overeating, undereating, are more likely to have so many health diseases like diabetes. There's more depression. It's just it's so much. And I work a lot with like, children and younger people, and I see it in them too. I see a lot of the stress turn into anger, a lot of the stress turn to anxiety, where, a lot of them, like, how our guest said, has to work twice as hard, or when they get in trouble, they just shut down and melt down, and like have a meltdown because it's too much. It's too much for them. It's hard for them to self-regulate. And not only is there stress, at school, but also at home, within the community. And it's just horrible to see that, they definitely have to work twice as hard to be able to get, some of the resources or just be okay. So stress is really tough. And I remember hearing, when I was in college about that study where Black women, even if they're more educated, have a PhD, master's, they still have and really well off, they still have babies with who are in low birth weight or have babies early. Their pregnancies don't go to full term. And I just thought that was shocking. And it all just comes back down to chronic stress. And I remember just being like, that's insane how like somebody who's well educated, is well off financially, lives in a home, with lots of love, but just because of the racism and, that's just so much stress and causes so much damage. Um, that to me was really, surprising to learn. And she talks about it in the book as well.
Yeah. And our guests, how have you seen stress in your community and with your family and friends, and some of the topics that have been talked about in this book? Okay. If you can hear us, guests, chime in whenever you feel free. But while if you are taking a call or have to come back, let me know. But I wanted to read some of these statistics that are showing up for us. And so it was kind of sad and shocking and not shocking at the same time, if that makes sense. But some of the data from Families USA, which I believe did this in 2019 about health disparities, that Black women are 40% more likely to die from breast cancer, and 52% from cervical cancer. 243% of Black women are more likely than their white counterparts to die from pregnancy or childbirth related causes. And it kind of alludes to what you were saying, Pamela. Black women, 66% of new HIV and AIDS cases, 30% more likely of Black men and 60% more likely of Black women to diagnose with high blood pressure. Black men are 1.3 times more likely to have colon cancer and 20% more likely to die from that. And then 20% of Black people, Black people are 20% more likely to report psychological stress and issues. Black children are twice as likely to have asthma. They're 56% more likely to be obese and 61% more likely to attempt suicide as a result of depression. Like those numbers are super extreme and just just confirms the fact that, we need to have great access to the things that the World Health Organization established back a while ago, that we need to have social and economical opportunities. We need to have resources. We need to have supports in the home, supports in our neighborhood. We need quality of schools, kind of like what our guests shared about, like the school systems not having the things it needs. I mean, and down to clean food and water and air, like you said, with the food deserts and things like that. And so, yes, we have things like Affordable Care Act, right? That kind of helped support that people need to have more better access. But then it's like 2016, there was a study through Cigna that the author shares, in that Black people are less likely to receive counseling and mental health treatment. And so I'm not sure if our special guest is back or if she can hear us.
Yeah, I
Um,
can hear you. I'm back. I'm sorry. I had a
yeah,
little problem and I had to, and it was that phone call helped solve it a bit.
yes, that's perfectly okay. I kind of figured that. I'm kind of good with guessing because we get busy in life. But
Hmm.
why do you think that Black individuals are less likely to seek out counseling and mental health treatment, that the study from 2016 Cigna did, that the author mentions in the book?
It's a stigma about mental health.
Mhm.
Uh, the stigma is that you are, I'm using the word crazy, and that's not that's what the stigma is, that you will be called rather
Mhm.
than being trying to seek out help.
Mhm.
And it's just a sick stigma
Mhm.
about seeking that kind of help.
Mhm.
We and that goes back to our education system.
Mhm.
We have one of the probably one of the worst education systems in the world. If you look at the other, well, not the semi third world countries, but the the world powers. We're supposed to be a world power. We we're not powerful because we are not teaching, and we're not teaching our children to learn. And this is what some of that problem is. And why we don't seek out that type of help.
Mhm. What would you do differently to break that stigma? And I know it could feel very overwhelming. We're all one person and that we can't, but we can all do something little to kind of break that stigma. What's something you've done to break that stigma with people that you know, so they don't feel like they're crazy and that they can actually go out and seek services and read books and self-care and do the things that feel like it's not possible?
What I would do is uh strengthen our education system. I'm not sure if you're old enough to remember when they had truant officers in the schools.
Mhm.
And when kids were not in school, they would go and find out why they weren't in school.
Mhm.
We don't have that anymore. And to restart it up would be uh, a bit dangerous because we have so much violence in the homes, that when someone from a school or from an authority of a situation of authority, or authority come to the door, it's difficult to knock on the door and say, why is not your child not in school?
Mhm.
And that I don't know what happened to society, that we have not learned the importance of education. So it would
Yeah.
be, it would be helpful if we could go back to the truant officers, but it would be helpful, but it would also be extremely difficult for the safety of the individuals.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, and yeah, she definitely brings up, the author brings up some solutions to combat the issues that we're having. And a lot of it is raising awareness. So like what you said, the things that we had in school systems that were working or, could be revamped. Could what research can we do to find out what's going to impact our kids the most? And even if it's like that, like truancy officers is something that we need, where they go out and make sure those kids are in school. And violence, like you said, is a concern. How do we figure out how to combat that piece, and what approaches we can use where people don't feel like you're being intrusive in my business, quote unquote, my business, things
Yeah.
like that. And she talks about funding research, raising awareness, revamping cultural competency, even those that don't look like Black and brown people that are doing the work, and they are faced with clients and people that are of Black and brown. Yes, they have training, but can they really have the skills to relate and be sensitive to the person across from them that doesn't look like them? So a white social worker coming in, or a white worker coming in, would they have enough training to be able to be empathize instead of sympathize and feeling sorry? Because there's a difference. And I think the author talks about that. There's a way you can do that. And I love it. It tickled me because she brought up like the Karen and the Karens. And I know we've heard that before in like social media, like white, which is a meme to describe middle-aged white women who, as we would say, do the most. But there's a sense of privilege and entitlement that they have, that they minimize and patronize and sympathize when they should be empathizing and acknowledging there is some differences, but not doing it in a way where it's rude or disrespectful to the person across from them. So yeah, it's a lot when it comes to that. And so she talks a little bit about reframing our narratives and how some positive self-talk can transform into positive ideas and attitudes. So I'll read a little bit from page 94 just to give the audience that maybe listen to this later an idea of what that looks like. And so she said, like, so if we were to say like being Black is exhausting, we could say no, racism is exhausting. It's not something wrong with us. We're not the broken individuals, but there's so many things around us that is exhausting for us. And that, for example, I don't have time to do any self-care. No, we can say, what is one thing we can do every day to lessen the stress of living while Black? Or, for example, I don't trust doctors, so I'm not going to go, and no, how would I seek out a Black physician or a Black doctor or a doctor I feel comfortable with? And so thinking about that, how would you guys reframe the narrative for yourself or for your clients, if it's you, Pamela? How do we reframe narratives that we've solidified so much in society?
I was actually just in Mexico this past weekend, and when people ask like, oh, what do you do? And I'm just like, letting them know that I'm a mental health therapist. Right away, they're like, oh, you need to give, therapy to my wife. And then the wife was like, oh, you need to give therapy to my husband. And everybody was just kind of awkward. Like, they're like, oh my God, they're arguing. And instead of making it a big deal, I was like, I need therapy. I was like, I'm my own therapist. Like, yeah, us professionals go to therapy, and we have our therapist, and like, it doesn't have to be a bad thing. Sometimes we just need to talk to someone, or we just, it's okay to ask for help. And, I do that. And so definitely just like normalizing it, or, letting them know that just because they're coming to therapy, they're not crazy, or, they're not doing horrible in life, and really just making it like a norm to seek help. And I definitely, as a white person, definitely let them know like, hey, I've done, Jennifer has seen me do it in the past, where I'm like, we also have Black female therapist, or Black male therapist, if that's something you feel more comfortable with. And that's, I'm not going to feel upset or in any way feel you know, judge because you don't want to talk to me. And I totally get it that, you know, sometimes just talking to somebody that, you know, is the same skin color in itself is just so healing. So, you know, just letting them know that it's okay. It's okay to talk to someone. It's okay to talk about, you know, asking for help. And if, you know, I'm not the person that they want to talk to, we have many more, which is so great about, you know, our center for sure.
Yeah, I think that's all, a valuable way to go about that. What also what I think is that the more we educate ourselves, the more we understand that everyone has a story.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the stories are very similar, but by virtue of the fact that we are all individuals, they are different. And to listen to their story and see how it's somewhat similar to yours, but different, I think helps, helps, period. To say, oh, I'm not the only one. There's many, many more people. And move on like that.
Yeah. I love that you said that. It's like we are at the end, no matter what our melanin and melatonin, melanin in our skin or our gender or our race and things like that, we are still people at the end of the day. And
Yes.
it's so disheartening. Like I bring up one of the topics, just me being a Black woman, in the book, she talks about the angry Black woman. And I don't know how many times I've heard that in spaces. And it's like, it's so fatiguing. What she says, it's like, it's a stereotype and we have to manage that. If we have the resting bitch face or, the things that we endure, they say anger is a very real and valid feeling, and we teach that in counseling like it is, and it's kind of secondary to something much bigger, kind of what you said, where everyone has a story. So it's like, where is this anger coming from? And
Mm-hmm.
anger is a very acceptable response to being mistreated. So, yeah,
Yes.
you are entitled to be upset and angry. But when we start getting into the habit of suppressing authentic feelings and emotions, like the author says, it start becoming bad for our health. We start seeing
Right.
systems breaking down that used to be supportive. We see, households look different. We see opportunities and disparities become the gaps become bigger, and it's like, how do we combat that when we have a real reason for being that, but now our expression of it adds more fatiguing stereotypes on top of it. Oh, you're just angry. Oh, you're just upset. Like, what is wrong with you? And it's like, there's nothing wrong with me, but my story has so much to say. And
Mm-hmm.
I love how she brought in like the movement of like Black girl magic. And yeah, we're more than just that anger, but we have a lot going on, and we need movements like this to be authentic and supportive of the things we are great at and the things that we can shine in outside of us being upset with the other areas. And then even when it comes to our Black men too, some of the things like simple stuff like tall men over short men, and there's not a lot of nice Black guys left, or are they aggressive? And we see systems like incarceration rates and our Black men dying way faster than us women, and we're by ourselves by the time we're in our 60s and 70s because the health systems are not supportive of that care. So I open the floor for you guys to share anything else about Black fatigue in this book that she mentions that we can share today with whoever's listening to this audio and video today. What else stands out for you guys when we talk about black fatigue? And I'll let our guests go first, and
Oh,
then have Pamela wrap us up. Um, and because my hope is whoever watches this and sees this could go get the book and have this in personal spaces to kind of have these conversations. And so I open the floor to you guys. What else would you like to share or stood out for you with this book, or just this idea of being Black and tired?
What stood out was she had so many of the statistics.
Mhm,
I'm a little older, and I've basically been through some of these situations.
mhm,
I didn't realize so much that I was fatigued, but because I was in a little different situation, and did not I was not totally bombarded with it, because I think I took a page out of the other people's book to take care of myself
mhm,
physically and mentally. Um, and because those are factors which help you not be so fatigued.
mhm,
Like I said, on a scale of 1 to 10, there are Black individuals that are at 10.5. I think I
mhm,
was probably only at maybe 8, because I kind of looked at what others were doing, and sort of like the book's author, she went through some things, and then she went uh, uh, to do the book writing, to understand how she could help herself. And I think that's what I did. And not only that, kind of surround myself with people that were working with themselves. Like
mhm.
I said, know that we all have this story, and we kind of relate the story to each other, and work within the story to to make it better.
Yeah. Yeah, spot on, spot on. And I love that when you pull research data and statistics, you can't
Hmm.
say, oh, you're making this up. We cannot
Right.
say we're making this up, because this is concrete evidence that we see in so many systems, workplaces, the health system, the economic system, our environments, the neighborhoods, things we talked about, simple as putting up an expressway or taking books out of schools,
Hmm.
and it's a lot. And just our color of our skin, something we can't even help. Um,
Hmm.
walk in the door and automatically we get placed with labels, you know.
Yes. Hmm.
Um, yeah, so Pamela, I'll give you the floor to kind of lay out the last thoughts of this book as we wrap up today's session in book club. And my goal is for those that are watching this to continue to join us as we do these every month, which we will tackle the book. I believe it's the Unapologetic Guide to Black Mental Health. So I guess you can definitely come stop by and get that book if you would like to join us next month as well. And yeah, we're going to continue these topics, but Pamela, take us home.
Oh, I would like to say one thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
I didn't get an opportunity to read The Grandma's Hands.
Okay.
I would like to read that.
Okay. I
And
got you. I got
yeah,
you.
so
Mhm.
and I would read the other book too, the new one coming out. So, but I'm gonna finish the Black Fatigue, because it's very interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry.
No,
Just want to.
you're no apologies. And like you said, what they say, if you want to hide something, put it in a book. And that's
You're
what
right.
we're trying to break through. And we're willing to provide the community with these books that has this knowledge to be able to take it and do some change. So
Hmm.
you
Yeah.
don't no need to apologize, but
Okay. Thank
yeah,
you.
you're welcome. Go ahead, Pamela.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys for, definitely giving us some very insightful comments. It's been really helpful also hearing your experiences throughout all of this and while we read this book. Um, but, I guess some of my last comments is just the term Black fatigue, I think can be really freeing for Black people, because for me, I was just like, oh, this is a term that kind of many of my colleagues and cohort members were feeling, not only now, but specifically in 2020. Because in 2020, I can remember it like just yesterday. I was just so, you know, I guess for me, my word was burnt out. I remember going to these rallies, still finishing grad school. And I do remember particularly like a lot of my cohort members just not participating, or just not coming to class, and or not coming to any of these rallies. And I just remember thinking like, man, like, they're definitely super burnt out. But it's not burnt out wasn't the term. It was just that it had to do with their race, the Black fatigue of just like everyone looking at them like, how are you doing? Are you okay? You know, this just happened on the news. We saw so many videos we didn't have to be seen or had to be shown. And if that took a toll on me, you know, I can't imagine on someone who, you know, has Black skin. And now, like, hearing the term like Black fatigue, I'm like, yes, this is the term that is so like powerful, and people, white people especially, need to understand that, like, you know, you need to be aware of this. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I guess just for, you know, white people, just I think what the book really, you know, shows and tells us is to be an anti-racist, right? Because I think so much people, you know, say they're non-racist or, oh, I'm not racist, but like it's more than that. It's being an anti-racist. And if you hear something or somebody makes a joke, just making sure to call them out, like, hey, you can't say that, like, or what are you saying that's not, you know, okay, and that can hurt so many people, and why there's so much fatigue. And I did put a little note here about, I put men height, and in the book they kind of talk about how, like, if you're a white man, the taller you are by inch, you get like $800 more, like statistically. But
Mm-hmm.
if you're a Black man, the taller you are, the less income you get, because then you're seen as like, you know, somebody who can be intimidating even more. And I was
Mm-hmm.
like, that's insane, you know, to think that your height, you know, for a white man is awesome, but for a Black man, you know, you're making less money statistically. That to me was just mind blowing. But, you know, overall, definitely, I think for a white person reading this, it's super helpful just because it teaches you, like, don't, you know, be an anti-racist, you know, focus on healing, on understanding your privilege, and, you know, making sure you're also spending money in POC or Black communities instead of just like Amazon, or, you know, something that like definitely doesn't, you know, help or support the Black community.
Right.
But I really enjoyed the book, especially just coming from the term Black fatigue. I was like, yes, this is a term that I think is so important for everyone to be aware of.
Mhm. Yeah, just being tired. We're tired of being tired, but we
Um,
strong. We don't give up. We continue to acknowledge some of these things. And even with the anti-racists, they even mention within the Black race, you know, some people who make it, you know, the ones that made it out of the hood and doing
Mm-hmm.
all these things to kind of come back and do that supportive stuff too, and not look down, because you can be surprised how you say you're not racist, but you can be racist towards your own, you know, where it's like you instantly see someone dressed a certain way and it's like, oh, they're ghetto, or they must be a thug, or they, and it's like, no, you'd be surprised. Like, I've seen people that got tons of money that dress, you
Mm-hmm.
know,
Mm-hmm.
like the next thug on the corner. And it's like, it doesn't matter what they look like. You just don't know
Right.
what people are going through, and, you know, just being compassionate and give back where you can and have those difficult conversations, and, you know, just acknowledge that you're tired and you can say no, and you can take a step back, and you can utilize, you are entitled to have a primary care physician, to have a therapist, to have a psychiatrist, to be able to be upset if your loved one went to jail, or, you know, being upset seeing someone that looks like your son or your uncle or your nephew, you know, endure such discriminatory practices, or just, you know, get killed for just being
Mm-hmm.
Black. So, um, yeah, it can be a lot, but if we take a step back, we breathe, we do what we can. If everyone does their part little by little, I think we can overcome the sense of fatigue. It's going to take a lot of work. It's going to take
Mm-hmm.
some time, because we've
Yep.
been doing this for a very long time. And we probably will continue as long as, you know, America's based on the way it's been based. We just got to get resilient and keep pushing. So I want to thank you, guest and Pamela, so much for your time, for reading and having this discussion. I am a firm believer these are such important topics to have in communities. And so please, guys, share the book with others. And, you know, as you grab more books from us and share it with your smaller spaces. And Pamela, you're getting more education to pass on to clients and all that good
Yes,
stuff.
for sure.
As a person that is tackling, I commend you for tackling a lot of these topics that it could feel like it doesn't relate, but you know, you're working in spaces where people don't look like you, and to be able
Yeah.
to educate yourself is, I just commend you for that. So
Thank you.
any last thoughts before we end? Guests, any last thoughts before we end this recording? And
Oh, I would just like to thank you all for having the book club, and I thank myself for inquiring, because this is only my first book, but I'm not finished it, but it's quite interesting and enlightening, and despite that I'm an older person, I'm never too old to learn, and
Mhm.
what I learned to be able to spread out to others.
yeah,
Yes, yes, for sure. And just a little quick tip. So if you do get this book, they have some awesome like discussion questions at the end that you can have within like your workplace or just your family and friends. And it really talks about like how we can really get to the point, what we can do at work. And I was like looking at the questions and I was thinking about like, you know, where we work, Jennifer, in our community and clinic. And I'm like, this is awesome. Like we actually do a lot of these stuff already. So I felt like a really good pat in the back. And obviously, there's always room for improvement. But just the fact that definitely we're talking about race, we're talking about, you know, a lot of these issues on the daily, if not, you know, with every client. It just feels good to know that, you know, we just got to keep going and trying to learn more and more and helping, you know, the community heal as much as we can when, you know, the community itself is also in the city and everything, everyone else is just like against them. So it's tough, tough work, but you know,
you can do it.
do
Yes,
it.
we can do it.
Do it. So I'll end there. Thank you guys. Keep reading, keep growing, keep changing, keep loving. And we will see everyone next month for our next book club. Thank you
Bye.
Okay,
guys.
thank you. Have a good evening. Thank you again. Bye.